Between Tides and Destinies. Previously. Edith crossed the portal of Stonehenge and returned transformed. Her hair turned to luminous silver, her gaze now piercing surfaces down to their very essences, her voice carrying harmonics that had not been there before. She brought revelations that none of the six guardians were fully prepared to receive. That Makeda and Hael were destined for sacred matrimony, that Helena carried a child whose fate had been written in the stars, and that Yuda, the mage who dwells in the sacred hills beyond the veil, awaits the precise moment to encounter this child not yet born, yet whose role in the world has already been seen by those who know how to see. The circle of the six guardians is formed, the portal of Stonehenge is active, and what must now be fulfilled is no longer vision or prophecy, but action, the southward journey that Alexander promised the Great Mansa, that the love of Hael and Makeda demands, and that destiny had been preparing since before any of them knew there was a destiny being prepared. In this new episode, we shall discover together how there are promises that are merely words, and there are those that are bone, made with the part of us that does not change its mind, that finds no excuse good enough to undo them, that exist independently of convenience or calculated risk. The promise Alexander made to the Great Mansa was of the second kind, and it is that promise which, on a full moon night in New Amesbury, summons Makeda, Amina, and Hael to hear the proposal that will alter the course of all their lives, to cross the Mediterranean in search of the paternal blessing that will legitimize that improbable union between a blacksmith and a princess. Before reaching the land of the sun, however, the Aletheia anchored in Douarnenez and in Concarneau, where Tiberia waited with a bear's embrace and banquets worthy of a reunion between brothers of a shared dream, where documents were sealed with wax and signet rings that would record for the ages what hands and intentions had built, and where every farewell was charged with the particular intensity of partings among seafarers, those who know there is no ordinary separation when the sea lies between. The dance between two worlds. There are leaders who choose a path and walk it with the discipline of those who have refused all others, and there are those whose greatness lies precisely in the refusal to choose, who serve the field and the sea with equal wholeness because they understand that both call to them with equally valid reasons. The dawn broke over New Amesbury with that golden luminosity that only spring mornings know how to weave, the light arriving not all at once, but in layers, each one revealing something the previous had left in shadow. Alexander stood at the window of his room, watching the village he had helped found come to life, while Helena still rested, her hand delicately laid upon the abdomen that had already begun to reveal the life growing within her. In the months that had passed, the young leader's routine had transformed itself into a complex dance between two worlds that demanded his presence and dedication with that particular insistence of things that will not accept half of who you are, that require everything, or make plain they received less than they deserved. The land called to him with its promises of stability and deep roots, while the sea whispered songs of freedom and adventure that made his navigator's heart beat with renewed force. It was as though Alexander lived two complementary existences simultaneously, each feeding the other in a perpetual cycle of purpose and fulfillment. And he understood, with the clarity that only time and labor produce, that to extinguish either one would be to diminish what he was, not to simplify it. And to you who follow this crossing, who enter with us this territory where promises made to the Great Mansa and improbable loves between blacksmiths and princesses converge into a journey the Mediterranean will have to accept, I leave a simple but essential request. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment sharing what you feel. Each gesture of yours is a flame added to the others, strengthening the invisible current that binds hearts across time and the mysteries that await revelation. In doing so, you do not merely support this work, You become part of this tapestry. The story continues. And it is your presence that keeps the fire alive. In the fertile fields surrounding New Amesbury, Alexander devoted himself with diligence to the agricultural tasks that ensured the sustenance of his growing community. The wheat and barley crops rippled in the wind like a green and golden sea, while the herds grazed placidly beneath his watchful eye. There was ancestral wisdom in that labor with the earth, knowledge passed from generation to generation that Alexander absorbed with the humility of one who understands that to govern means not only to command, but also to serve with one's own hands. Each seed planted represented hope. Each animal born symbolized abundance. Each harvest celebrated reflected the fruit of the collective labor he inspired in all those around him. Yet, whenever the sea breeze reached his senses, carrying the unmistakable scent of salt and seaweed, Alexander felt himself irresistibly drawn toward the waters of Brittany. And along those coastal shores, a fishing village had been born that flourished under his guidance, where what had begun as the necessity of feeding the community had transformed itself into a collective vocation, where men who had once only tilled the earth now mastered nets, hooks, and salting techniques that preserved the catch through the harshest months. The audacious proposal. There are proposals that arrive with diplomacy, prepared, contextualized, presented from the most favorable angle possible. And there are those that arrive the way Alexander made them, straight to the center, with a gravity that does not ask permission to be taken seriously because it arrives already being what it is. Hael had become a constant presence at Alexander's side during the sea voyages, like a younger brother hungry to learn every nuance of navigation and command. The young blacksmith, whose hands already mastered the art of bending metal beneath the forge's heat, now sought to master sails, rigging, and the nautical secrets that would make him a captain worthy of respect. Helena and Amina supported that undertaking wholeheartedly, understanding that the journeys ahead would demand more than courage. They would require skill, knowledge, and the capacity to make sound decisions under pressure. The three women had developed among themselves a deep sisterhood, forged in the storms they had faced together and in the calms they had celebrated as shared victories. As Helena prepared herself for motherhood, she felt reassured knowing that when the moment came for Alexander to set sail again, Makeda and Amina would be at her side as companions and protectors. On a particularly serene night, when the full moon bathed New Amesbury in its silver light, they all gathered for a relaxed meal that would become unforgettable. Fresh fish, fragrant breads, artisan cheeses, and wine that warmed the heart. Between laughter and lively conversation, Alexander rose suddenly, with that expression everyone recognized as the forerunner of important words. A gravity that was not burden, but the specific weight of one who has gone to the bottom of something before beginning to speak. He evoked the sacred promise made to the Great Mansa of Carthage to watch over the well-being of the princesses with the same devotion with which he protected Helena, honoring and respecting them as every lady of noble family demands and deserves, and set forth his proposal to seize upon the budding courtship between Hael and Makeda and undertake a journey to Carthage, to the radiant land of the sun, in search of the paternal blessing and approval that would legitimize that improbable union between a blacksmith and a princess. The silence that followed was thick with emotion and anticipation. Makeda felt her heart quicken as she took in the magnitude of the proposal. To return to her homeland no longer as the rebellious princess who had departed in search of adventure, but as a woman transformed by the sea and by love, accompanied by a suitor her father could never have imagined. Hael went momentarily pale as he grasped that he would stand before the powerful Great Mansa. His blacksmith's hands, capable of bending the most resistant of metals, trembled imperceptibly as he sought the encouraging gaze of Makeda. Amina was the first to break the silence with a radiant smile that lit her face, declaring that the journey would be not merely necessary, but magnificent and transformative for all those involved. Helena rose with the grace that was characteristic of her, even with her abdomen already pronounced, and walked to Alexander, weaving her fingers through his, her green eyes shining with a mixture of pride and tenderness as she gave her full support to her husband's decision. Makeda finally found her voice, and when she spoke, her words carried all the strength and determination that had made her not merely a princess, but a true leader. She thanked Alexander for the honor of fulfilling his promise to the Great Mansa, acknowledging that few men would possess such integrity and commitment to a word once given. She turned to Hael, taking his calloused hands between hers, and declared before all present that there was no man in all of Brittany, Carthage, or any known kingdom she desired at her side more than that blacksmith of valiant heart and indomitable spirit. Hael responded with an eloquence that surprised everyone, promising that he would honor Makeda not only as a princess, but as the extraordinary woman she had become, swearing before all who were gathered that he would seek the Great Mansa's blessing with sincerity and humility, but also with the steadiness of one who knows the worth of his own character. His words moved everyone present, and even those who had initially doubted the viability of that union began to believe that the impossible might yet become real. Anchors of memory. There was something Alexander understood about long journeys that many impatient leaders do not. That the straight line between 2 points is rarely the most efficient path to arriving at the destination transformed. That certain stops are not detours, they are part of the route itself. When the day of departure finally came, all of New Amesbury gathered at the port to bid farewell to the travelers. The Aletheia rocked gently in the waters, its sails still furled, awaiting the moment to embrace the winds that would carry it first to the coastal villages and then to distant Africa. Alexander had decided that the journey would not be a straight line toward its final destination, but a pilgrimage through the communities he had helped found, an opportunity to revisit the fruits of his pioneering work and strengthen the bonds of friendship and loyalty he had built across the years. The first stop would be Douarnenez, a village that represented one of the earliest successful experiments in coastal settlement, where old companions of adventure had chosen to build their lives far from their original homeland. Helena, even in her pregnancy, had insisted on being part of the journey as far as Concarneau, refusing to remain in New Amesbury while everyone else sailed on, with that particular refusal of those who see in pregnancy no reason to be left behind. Alexander had initially resisted, concerned about the risks that navigation might pose for her and the child, but his wife's determination was unshakable. She argued that the waters as far as Concarneau were relatively calm and well-known, and that she would not forfeit the chance to witness the reaction of old friends upon learning the news of the pregnancy and the journey to Carthage. Edith, for her part, was radiant at the prospect of encountering lands that until then had existed only in stories told by travelers, her eyes shining with a renewed youth that made everyone smile. The first great adventure of a woman who had discovered, after Stonehenge transformed her, that she had not exhausted her surprises for the world, nor had the world exhausted its surprises for her. When the sails of the Aletheia finally unfurled and the wind filled the canvas with its invisible force, a mingling of joy and melancholy settled over those who remained and those who departed, with that particular quality of farewells among seafarers, who know there is no ordinary separation when the sea lies between. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, each man knowing his precise function and executing it with admirable precision. Hael took his post with seriousness, determined to prove that the months of training under Alexander's tutelage had not been in vain. Needham remained in his habitual place, watching the waters with that enigmatic expression that suggested he saw far more than waves and foam. Makeda and Amina positioned themselves at the prow, letting the sea breeze caress their faces, feeling that indescribable freedom that only the open sea can provide, which cannot be explained to those who have never felt it and which, once felt, is never entirely forgotten even when one stands on dry land. The voyage to Douarnenez unfolded blessed by favorable winds and calm seas. During the crossing, Alexander took the opportunity to instruct Hael in advanced navigation techniques, teaching him to read the stars as celestial maps and to interpret the subtle signs the ocean offers to those who know how to observe. The young blacksmith absorbed each lesson with fervent dedication, asking intelligent questions that demonstrated not merely curiosity, but genuine talent for the nautical art. Makeda observed the lessons from a distance, her heart overflowing with pride as she watched the man she loved gradually transform into the captain she had always known he could become. When Douarnenez finally appeared on the horizon, its modest but solid structures spread across the rocky coast, a chorus of exclamations rang across the deck. The inhabitants, upon sighting the unmistakable sails of the Aletheia, abandoned their activities and ran to the port. Familiar faces of men who had left Amesbury years before in search of new opportunities, who now wore the quiet satisfaction of those who had found their place in the world. Reflections of pioneering. There are successes that demand explanation, that must be analyzed, broken down, attributed to specific causes so that the lesson may be passed on. And there are those that explain themselves simply by looking at the hands of those who built them and at the eyes of those who live within them. The landing at Douarnenez was celebrated as a festive event. Warm embraces, news exchanged, and tears of joy shed without embarrassment. The village leaders, men Alexander had known when they were still inexperienced youths, now displayed the confidence and wisdom earned through years of hard work and the overcoming of challenges. They led the visitors through Douarnenez with evident pride, showing them the storehouses full of salted fish, the workshops where nets and fishing equipment were crafted, and the simple but comfortable dwellings that sheltered entire families. Agriculture, they confessed, had never flourished as abundantly as fishing. The rocky soil and proximity to the sea made the fishing trade more natural and more profitable, and Douarnenez took pride in being known as the village of master fishermen, a reputation that would spread in such a way that, in the near future, it would reach even the lands the Romans would call Gaul. During the 2 days of their stay, Alexander had countless deep conversations with the community leaders about the challenges and achievements that had marked the years since the founding. Seated around bonfires at night, with the sound of waves breaking on the rocks as background music, the men shared stories of storms weathered, of periods of scarcity overcome through mutual cooperation, and of small daily victories that, accumulated over time, had resulted in the prosperity they now enjoyed. Alexander listened with genuine attention, making mental notes of strategies that might be applied in other villages, and learning from the mistakes and successes of those pioneers with that particular humility of one who is a founder, yet knows that those who stayed and built had taught the one who departed more than he could ever have left behind. Makeda and Amina enchanted the inhabitants of Douarnenez with their grace and warmth. Far from displaying haughtiness or distance, they moved naturally among the local families, taking genuine interest in their lives and crafts. Amina helped a feverish child recover through a tea prepared from plants that grew abundantly in the region, with that particular competence of healers who need not announce what they know how to do, because the herbs and the results announce it for them. Makeda shared stories about fishing techniques used by Carthaginian fishermen, sparking interest and curiosity among the men who dedicated their lives to the sea. Helena spent much of her time with the pregnant women and young mothers of the village, exchanging experiences about motherhood and finding comfort in the collective wisdom of those who had already walked the path she was beginning to tread. Edith, accompanying her niece in those conversations, confided to Helena that she now understood why Alexander had devoted so much of himself to establishing these communities. There was something precious there that transcended purely material concerns, that richness of authentic human connections which simplicity does not impede, but more often than not facilitates. On the night before departure, the inhabitants of Douarnenez organized a banquet in honor of the visitors. Long tables set outdoors, lit by torches that danced at the whim of the sea breeze. fresh fish roasted over open flame, fragrant stews, breads just pulled from the ovens, and artisan ale. Musicians improvised traditional melodies while some danced and others sang songs that spoke of the sea, of adventure, and of longing. Alexander rose to deliver a heartfelt toast, thanking everyone for proving that his vision of prosperous and self-sufficient communities was not merely an idealistic dream, but a tangible reality built with sweat, determination, and a spirit of cooperation. When the stars finally reached their fullest brilliance and weariness overtook the festive joy, all retired with full hearts, knowing they had witnessed something rare and precious, the genuine celebration of bonds that neither time nor distance would ever manage to break. Bound for Concarneau. There are farewells that are merely farewells, and there are those that are also promises, that close one chapter while opening another, that say goodbye to a place while confirming there is reason enough to return. The morning of departure from Douarnenez dawned wrapped in a light mist that lent the landscape an almost dreamlike quality, as though the place knew it was being left behind and asked, through the fog, one moment more of being looked upon. The inhabitants gathered at the port for a farewell that, though brief, carried the emotional intensity characteristic of those who know that reunions between seafarers never come with a guaranteed date. Alexander assured the community leaders that Douarnenez would remain always in his thoughts and in his plans. The women placed in Helena's hands small handcrafted gifts for the child soon to come. Hand-woven blankets, protective amulets, and aromatic sachets that, according to local tradition, would ensure a peaceful birth and a healthy child, each item carrying the intention deposited by the hands that had made them. When the sails of the Aletheia unfurled once more and the ship began to draw away from the coast, Hael assumed a more active role in the navigation, applying his newly acquired knowledge beneath Alexander's approving eye. He demonstrated a natural aptitude for anticipating shifts in the wind, adjusting the sails with near-perfect timing. Alexander observed discreetly, intervening only when absolutely necessary, allowing Hael to develop the confidence that transforms theoretical knowledge into practical mastery. With that pedagogy of the finest teachers, who instruct more through the space they open than through the instructions they provide, the veteran sailors exchanged meaningful glances, recognizing that they were witnessing the birth of yet another true man of the sea. During the crossing, Makeda sat with Edith at the ship's stern, sharing stories about Carthage and the land of the sun that left Helena's aunt utterly entranced. The African princess described with vivid detail the vibrant markets of her hometown, where intoxicatingly fragrant spices mingled with the sound of countless tongues, creating a cosmopolitan symphony that embodied the very essence of Mediterranean trade. She spoke of palaces in white marble that reflected the sun with almost blinding intensity, of hanging gardens that defied the laws of nature, and of libraries that safeguarded knowledge accumulated by civilizations thousands of years old. Amina joined the conversation, adding descriptions of the fauna that inhabited the lands beyond Carthage. Elephants whose majesty defied the imagination of those who had never seen creatures of such magnitude. Lions whose roars echoed across the savannas like earthbound thunder, giraffes that seemed to touch the sky with their impossible necks. Edith asked ceaselessly, her curiosity as insatiable as a child discovering the world for the first time. And the princesses promised they would make a point of providing her with unforgettable experiences, ensuring that her visit to Africa would be far more than a journey of sightseeing. It would be transformative at the deepest levels. When Concarneau finally emerged on the horizon, distinguishable by the watchtower Tiberio had ordered built as the village's landmark, a wave of anticipation ran through everyone on the Aletheia's deck. Alexander knew that this reunion would be especially significant. Tiberio had been his companion since childhood, sharing dreams when they were still boys running barefoot through the fields of Massalia on the Mediterranean. Together, they had imagined magnificent futures, made promises of eternal brotherhood, and now, years later, Both had given form to visions that many would have considered impossible. Nevum drew close to Alexander and, resting a hand upon his shoulder, murmured that great revelations awaited in Concarneau, though he refused to elaborate on the enigmatic nature of that prophecy, with that particular reticence of those who know that certain truths must be discovered, not announced. Concarneau, jewel of the shore. There were settlements that grew, and there were those that flourished, that found in the original purpose of their founding not a limitation, but a direction, and transformed it into something that exceeded whatever any original plan had anticipated. Concarneau was of the second kind. The approach revealed a village that surpassed every expectation Alexander had carried through the months of his absence. The port had been significantly expanded, now accommodating not only fishing vessels, but also merchant ships of considerable size that bore witness to the growth of local trade. Solid warehouses lined the quay, their red rooftops contrasting vividly against the deep blue of the sea. Cultivated fields stretched in every direction, displaying orderly plantings of grain, vegetables, and vineyards that promised abundant harvests. Concarneau had achieved the perfect balance between the gifts of the sea and the land, becoming a model of self-sufficiency and prosperity that other communities aspired to reach. Tiberio waited on the quay, surrounded by virtually the entire population of Concarneau, who had abandoned their activities to receive the Aletheia. Alexander's childhood companion had become a man of imposing presence, his shoulders broadened by physical labor, his face weathered by sun and sea wind, yet his eyes retained that gleam of youthful enthusiasm that Alexander remembered from their boyhood days, with that quality of things that time does not wear away because they are anchored in something deeper than the surface time can reach. When the boarding plank was lowered, Tiberio did not wait for Alexander to descend. He leapt aboard in one agile bound and wrapped his friend in a bear's embrace that expressed years of accumulated longing. Words seemed insufficient to convey the emotion of that reunion, and so both men remained in silence for long moments, simply absorbing the reality of each other's presence. Tiberio personally led the group along the paths of Concarneau, narrating with pride each achievement that had marked the village's growth, explaining how the combination of fertile soil and maritime proximity had created ideal conditions for multifaceted prosperity, how the fields produced surpluses traded with other villages, how naval carpentry workshops had emerged and were building vessels sold to neighboring communities. Concarneau had transformed itself from a settlement into a regional economic center, and Tiberio made a point of crediting Alexander as the inspiration and original architect of that transformation. With that particular gratitude of those who know that certain beginnings would not have happened without someone who believed in them before there was sufficient evidence to justify the belief. The news of the relationship between Makeda and Hael spread through the village with the speed characteristic of small communities where everyone knows everyone. At first, there was widespread disbelief. A princess of Carthage, heir to a millennial royal lineage, had chosen a blacksmith of humble origins. Some of the bolder young men of Concarneau confessed among themselves that, had they known Makeda would consider suitors from outside the nobility, they would have risked their chances years before. Yet when they finally met Hael and witnessed the respectful but assured manner in which he carried himself at Makeda's side, the skeptics began to understand that this was no ordinary romance, but the union of two extraordinary souls who transcended social convention, and that the difference between impossible and possible is rarely one of category, but of the courage of those willing to refuse the impossible as the final word. Celebration and revelations. There are feasts organized as demonstrations of wealth, and there are those organized as demonstrations of affection, where abundance is not proof of possessions, but of how deeply the guests were awaited and how much their arrival matters. Tiberio organized a banquet that surpassed in scale and elaboration everything Alexander had encountered in the previous villages. tables arranged in the central square, lit by hundreds of candles and torches that transformed night into day. Servants circulating constantly with trays laden with delicacies, live music filling the air with joyful melodies that invited the body to dance. Tiberio made a point of toasting repeatedly, not only to the health of the visitors, but especially to Alexander and Helena, whose names, he declared, were spoken with reverence and gratitude whenever the community celebrated its collective achievements. Helena, moved by the tribute, shed tears of emotion that Alexander gently dried as he whispered words of love and pride into her ear. As the banquet progressed and the wine eased inhibitions, several young men of Concarneau approached Hael to offer him formal congratulations. One of them, made particularly bold by the wine, confessed openly that he had fallen in love with Makeda during the founding of Concarneau, but had never gathered the courage to court her, assuming that a princess would never look at someone of his social standing. Now, learning that such a possibility had always existed, he mourned his own timidity deeply, with that particular lament of opportunities one recognizes having failed to seize, not for lack of chance, but for lack of the daring to create it. Hael received these confessions with humility and good humor, offering encouraging words about never surrendering the fight for what the heart desires, regardless of apparent obstacles. Makeda, surrounded by the women of Concarneau eager to learn the details of her adventures and her romance with Hael, found herself at the center of an attention she would have avoided in years past. But the transformation wrought by the sea and by lived experience had profoundly altered her relationship with such visibility. The princess shared with moving candor how greatly she had grown after facing the waves alongside Helena and Alexander, explaining that her former life in Carthage, though luxurious, had also been deeply confining. She could not walk freely through the streets, converse casually with merchants, or simply exist without the constant weight of protocol and dynastic expectation. The sea had offered her something that all the wealth of Carthage had never managed to provide: genuine freedom, the freedom to be who she was rather than who she was expected to be. When Amina described the African fauna she had promised to show Edith, elephants, lions, giraffes, zebras, and Edith enthusiastically confirmed each description with the insatiable curiosity of a child discovering the world for the first time. The women of Concarneau listened in fascination, their world expanding through the princess's words far beyond any map any Breton cartographer had ever drawn. Nevem remained relatively apart during the feast, observing the human interactions with that contemplative detachment characteristic of Druids. Yet he was not alone for long, for some of the older and more spiritually inclined inhabitants of Concarneau drew near, seeking wisdom and guidance on matters that weighed upon their souls. The Druid received each person with infinite patience, offering counsel that blended earthly pragmatism with mystical insight. For some, specific herbs and purification rituals. For others, simply the gift of attentive listening, understanding that often the act of being truly heard already constitutes half the healing. When the night had advanced sufficiently, Alexander and Tiberio withdrew slightly from the crowd for a private conversation, climbing to the top of the watchtower where a panoramic view unfolded before them, and sharing deep reflections beneath the canopy of stars about the paths their lives had taken, agreeing that true wealth was not measured in possessions, but in lives touched, in communities established, and in legacies that would outlast their mortal existences. Days in Concarneau. There is work that consumes, and there is work that nourishes, that serves the world but also serves the one who does it, that need not be separated from life because it is an essential part of it. The days in Concarneau had the quality of the second kind for nearly all who lived them. The days that followed unfolded in a productive mixture of labor and leisure. Alexander devoted his mornings to administrative meetings with Tiberio, reviewing records of agricultural and fishing output, discussing strategies for commercial expansion, and identifying infrastructure needs. Tiberio maintained meticulous documentation of all of Concarneau's economic activities, displaying an administrative diligence that impressed even Alexander. The records revealed patterns of consistent growth, equitable distribution of resources, and long-term planning that ensured sustainability, with the solidity of one who had not merely dreamed the future, but built structures capable of sustaining it. Helena spent her afternoons with the midwives and healers of Concarneau, absorbing knowledge about pregnancy and childbirth that would prove invaluable in the weeks ahead. The experienced women shared not only practical techniques, but also emotional wisdom about how to navigate the physical and psychological transformations of motherhood, teaching her specific exercises to strengthen the body, showing her medicinal plants that ease the common discomforts of pregnancy, recounting reassuring stories of successful births that dispelled the natural fears and anxieties of first-time mothers. Helena felt profoundly grateful for that feminine sisterhood which transcended bonds of blood, creating networks of support grounded in universally shared experience. That form of knowing passed from mother to mother, from healer to healer, which no treatise can fully capture because it belongs to the category of what must be lived, not merely read. Hael seized every available moment to learn more about naval construction and maintenance from the carpenters of Concarneau. The local craftsmen had developed innovative hull caulking techniques that significantly reduced water infiltration, methods of treating timber that increased its resistance to salt-induced decay, and keel designs that improved stability without sacrificing speed. Hael absorbed these lessons with the same dedication he brought to his work at the forge, understanding that excellence in any field demands meticulous attention to the apparently insignificant detail. Makeda and Amina, for their part, explored the surroundings of Concarneau with fascination for the local flora. Accompanied by amateur botanists from the village, they identified medicinal plants, culinary herbs, and ornamental flowers, comparing their properties and uses with equivalents from their homelands, discovering that despite obvious climatic differences, there existed surprising similarities between ecosystems that appeared entirely distinct, universal principles of nature manifesting through forms adapted to local conditions. During one of the afternoons, a friendly competition of nautical skills was organized between the crew of the Aletheia and the local fishermen. Boat races, net casting contests, and precision navigation challenges generated boisterous entertainment for the entire village, which gathered along the shore to cheer. When Hael managed to defeat seasoned local fishermen in a test of reading sea currents, Makeda could not contain shouts of celebration that drew smiles from everyone around, with that particular joy of those who cheer for someone proving to themselves what they do not yet fully know they are capable of. The competition concluded without official winners, for the true aim had always been to strengthen communal bonds through healthy and spirited rivalry, ending with a collective barbecue on the beach, where tales of the sea were exchanged between sips of mead and contagious laughter that echoed beneath the twilight sky. Consolidation and documentation. There are leaders who inspire, and there are those who, beyond inspiring, ensure that what was inspired is not undone when they are no longer present to sustain it, who understand that greatness without structure is merely a moment, and that a true legacy demands that the moment be recorded in such a way that it may be invoked when the living memory of those who experienced it is no longer available. The week Alexander had decided to remain in Concarneau held a specific purpose beyond fellowship: the legal consolidation of his ownership and rights over the lands through meticulous documentation. Accompanied by Tiberio and a scribe contracted specifically for that function, Alexander spent days reviewing territorial boundaries, taking inventory of available natural resources, cataloging constructed structures, and recording governance agreements that would regulate Concarneau in the decades to come. This bureaucratic labor, though tedious, was absolutely essential. Without proper documentation, future disputes over property and authority could emerge, threatening the stability that so much effort had built. Alexander understood that true leaders do not merely inspire great deeds, but also deal responsibly with the thankless administrative details that ensure long-term sustainability. With that disposition of those who are more interested in what they have built enduring than in appearing above the tasks necessary to make it endure. The documents drawn up established clearly that Concarneau had been founded through Alexander's efforts and resources, particularly through the provision of the Aletheia, which had made the original expedition to those previously unexplored lands possible. They also stipulated that, while Alexander retained ultimate ownership rights, day-to-day administration fell to the local council led by Tiberio, ensuring operational autonomy while preserving ties to the broader organizational structure. These arrangements represented a delicate balance between centralized authority and local self-governance, acknowledging that prosperous communities require both guidance and the freedom to adapt to specific circumstances that only permanent residents can fully understand. A significant portion of the documentation was devoted to recording Concarneau's specific achievements that justified territorial claims under the customary laws of the time. The lands cleared and cultivated were listed, demonstrating the transformation of wilderness into productive territory through human labor. Permanent structures built were enumerated: residences, storehouses, workshops, stables, wells, port facilities. Alexander also established legal precedents for the succession of leadership should Tiberio die or decide to transfer his responsibilities. The local council would elect a new leader by vote among permanent residents with more than 3 years of documented contribution to the community. This embryonic democratic structure was revolutionary for the era, when the overwhelming majority of settlements operated under aristocratic or autocratic models of governance. Alexander believed deeply that prosperous communities demanded the active participation of all their members, not merely passive obedience to imposed authorities. On the final day devoted to administrative affairs, a formal ceremony was held in the central square, where the completed documents were read aloud before the entire assembled community. Each resident was given the opportunity to express agreement or objections, ensuring that the agreements genuinely reflected collective will rather than unilateral imposition. The population applauded enthusiastically the provisions that guaranteed their rights while appropriately acknowledging Alexander's contributions. The documents were sealed with wax and marked with the official signet rings Alexander had brought specifically for that purpose. Copies were distributed to designated custodians. Tiberio naturally received one. Others were entrusted to the local scribe, to the community's religious leader, and one full set would be carried back to New Amesbury for secure storage in the central archives. There was in that act of multiplying the copies the wisdom of one who knows that documents exist to survive adverse circumstances, and that the best protection for a record is that there be no single point of vulnerability that a fire, a flood, or a poor human decision could eliminate all at once. Eve of the Great Journey. There are conversations that serve to transmit information, and there are those that serve to confirm that the person one is speaking with is still the same person they have always been, that time and distance and the transformations both have undergone have not changed what is essential in who they are to each other. With the legal and administrative affairs finally concluded, Alexander met privately with Tiberio for a final conversation that both knew would be charged with deep emotional significance. Seated in the modest office Tiberio had established to manage the village's affairs, the two childhood friends shared memories of decades past, reflecting on how boys who had played in the fields of Massalia on the Mediterranean had become men who shaped the destinies of entire communities. Tiberio confessed that he still sometimes woke each morning in Concarneau in a state of wonder, marveling that apparently impossible boyhood dreams had materialized into tangible reality. Alexander replied that this sense of astonishment should never disappear, for it was precisely what kept them humble and grateful in the face of the blessings they had received. With that wisdom of those who know that it is wonder which prevents gratitude from hardening into habit and achievement from curdling into arrogance. The conversation turned to the imminent journey to Carthage and all the potential dangers such an expedition entailed. Tiberio expressed genuine concern about the risks of sailing to Africa. Mediterranean storms were notoriously unpredictable. Berber pirates operated in waters close to the African coast, and the very reception Alexander might receive from the Great Mansa remained uncertain despite Makeda's assurances. Alexander acknowledged the validity of those concerns, but explained that certain journeys transcend rational calculations of risk versus reward. He had made a sacred promise to Makeda's father, and men of honor keep their word regardless of personal convenience, not because they are impervious to fear, but because they understand that the value of a word lies precisely in the circumstance of its being kept when it would be easier not to keep it. Tiberio then surprised Alexander by presenting elaborate gifts destined for the Great Mansa, exceptionally refined pieces of craftsmanship produced by Concarneau's finest artisans, including embroidered tapestries depicting maritime scenes, decorative ceramic pieces glazed in vibrant colors, and agricultural tools of innovative design incorporating locally developed improvements. These gifts would serve a dual purpose: to demonstrate respect to the African king through offerings of value, and to illustrate the level of civilization and sophistication attained by the Breton communities, establishing Hael's credibility as a suitor worthy of a Carthaginian princess. Alexander was deeply moved by this generosity, embracing his friend at length while murmuring words of gratitude that language seemed inadequate to convey fully. On the final night before the last departure bound for Africa, Concarneau organized a celebration modest in scale but profound in meaning. There was no extravagance or excess, only a shared meal around bonfires on the beach, where stories were told, songs were sung, and contemplative silences were respected when words seemed insufficient. Nevem led a brief blessing ritual, invoking the protection of the elements for the sea journey that would begin at dawn. Alexander rose to deliver a final speech, his voice thick with emotion as he thanked Concarneau for being a living testament that bold visions, when pursued with dedication and integrity, could transform themselves into legacies that would endure across generations. When the fire had finally reduced itself to pulsing embers and the stars reached their fullest brilliance, all retired knowing that dawn would bring farewells and the beginning of adventures that would test courage, strengthen bonds, and potentially alter the course of multiple lives in ways still impossible to fully foresee. The Aletheia waited in the dark waters, the Mediterranean waited beyond, and the Great Mansa, in the land of the sun, waited without knowing he was waiting. That a promise made in the name of love was on its way to being fulfilled with everything Alexander had to offer: loyalty, presence, and the unshakable conviction that certain things deserve to be done regardless of what the journey may cost. In the next episode, the Mediterranean will open between Brittany and the land of the sun, and with it, all the dangers Tiberio named and all the unknowns that no map records completely. Hael will discover, in the first true storm after Concarneau, the difference between knowing how to navigate and knowing how to navigate when the wind refuses to cooperate. And in that difference, he will learn something about himself that training in calm waters could never have taught him. Makeda will draw closer to the identity she left behind when she departed from Carthage, feeling, as the African coast approaches, the weight of being who she has always been and at the same time who she has become, both things true simultaneously, which is precisely the kind of paradox that cannot be resolved, only inhabited. And when the Aletheia finally anchors in a Carthaginian port, the reception that awaits her there will depend on a variable that no amount of planning can fully guarantee: the willingness of a powerful father to acknowledge that his daughter chose well, even if she chose in ways that no father of a princess ever anticipated he would need to accept.